Hello, my name is Sarah and I am your chakra coach. On this podcast, we'll be exploring how the chakra system can help guide you to grow your emotional, mental, physical, and spiritual wellness, leading you closer to your highest self. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. I hope you're doing well. I've been out of my routine for the past few days, and let me tell you, that is hard for me. Do you have like a practice that you go to or things that you do to set yourself up for the day? I have a whole morning thing that I do each day, and I haven't been able to do it, and it makes me feel a little off, I mean, just some practices that I do that I think help me with my life and what I'm dealing with in the moment. Do you do that? If you do, I would love to hear about it. The times that I feel like I'm making the most of my life are when I am diligently following my spiritual practice routine. So I can't wait to get back to it. Most of this year has been about various healing modalities, and we're continuing that today. I want to introduce you to my friend Ian Roth of the Regressions Session, exploring healing through past lives and the metaphysical. It's a podcast. Ian is one of those big thinker type people. He's not afraid to go down a road just to see where it goes. He will tell you this comes from his insatiable curiosity about the world, and I agree. And I also think that he has a unique ability to trust himself, even when everyone around him says he's wrong. I'm sorry if that sounds a little vague, but don't worry. We'll get deeper into it when you hear his story of how he got into doing past life regressions or reviews, as he prefers to call them. It's a story that I think a lot of us can relate to, even if our path didn't lead us to a place of doing that kind of work. We talk briefly about what could be called spiritual abuse or religious trauma, so just be aware of that as you go in. Now, honestly, I'd never really done this kind of thing before or talked to anyone who did. It isn't that I don't think we don't live more than once or that we're souls rather than bodies. And probably because of my upbringing, I just always assumed that people were making it up. And that sounds really harsh, I know. Now, rest assured, Ian has set me straight in a lot of ways on that. But it always seemed like everyone I knew who had some sort of past life regression told me they were some sort of princess or someone incredibly important in the world. And I just thought, well, not everyone can have been Cleopatra or whatever. So I kind of dismissed the whole thing until I met Ian last year. He cleared up a lot of my questions and the like. So I just have a better understanding now of the practice. And what I realized was that what I thought about the practice was way too simplified. Anyway, my point is, whether you believe that we live over and over or you're a once and done kind of person, I think you'll find what Ian does really interesting. He's also really good at helping his clients integrate their past experiences with their present, which is the thing that I found most amazing about him. I should also mention that Ian is entirely self taught and believes that all of us have the capacity to connect with our past selves. Personally, I'm going to let him be my guide, but I love that he does want to be a guide and not a guru. I resonate with that so much. So here's Ian and his work with past life regressions.
Hi, Ian. I'm so glad to have you here on the show today. How are you?
I am really good. I've been really excited to come on your show, actually. I've had you on my show twice now,
Mm-hmm.
kind of. As of recording this, I actually haven't released our second
The
episode.
second one. No,
Yeah.
I'm so excited to have you here. I mean, I think we've known each other about a year now, and every conversation
Yeah.
I've had with you has been insightful and fun and interesting. And I just so appreciate you taking time this morning to come on the show.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. I feel like, yeah, whenever I've talked to you, and especially when we've like done an episode, it's like 3 or 4 episodes in one because we like slam through so much. And
So much
it's
content.
yeah, it's not even like it's not even just like fluff either. It's like really like nitty gritty stuff. It's that we like really get into it.
Right? Right. And that's the thing too. Like we just never know where the conversation is going to go. So, I mean, I guess fair warning, listeners, buckle up because we don't know what's going to happen. We never know, but it's always good.
It's gonna get a little weird,
It,
probably.
it could. It definitely could. So like I said in the intro, Ian, you are the host of Regression Sessions. Yes?
Yes.
That
So
is your podcast.
yeah, my podcast is called The Regression Session, exploring healing through past lives and the metaphysical.
That is so incredibly fascinating. So I would like to start out by sharing your story with the listeners. How did you get into regressions in general? I know you've told me sort of on the side that it was kind of silly, kind of dumb how you started it, but I am so interested. So please, please share your silly story with us in all its glory.
Well, I mean, to me, it's silly. I bet to other people it probably wouldn't really be necessarily silly. So, um, I'll just start from like the beginning. I grew up Mormon. For anybody who doesn't know what Mormonism is, I'm gonna put this as gently and lightly as possible. It's like a pseudo cult, basically. I wouldn't call it's like a cult light, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, like a diet cult, right?
Yeah.
I'm not going to get too much into it, but basically, the main issue for me coming out of it was like I learned the founder was just like a terrible person. Um, he did a lot of terrible things,
Oh, that's so
and
hard.
but yeah, it is, and they tout the you know, I'm sure anybody who's religious or who has been religious has experienced this. It's like, this is the truth. We know the truth, and you're gonna go to heaven when you die. And like they have this like huge convoluted thing of heaven. And so when I found that out, I ended up just going like, oh, well, this is wrong. And if this is wrong, why do people believe it's true? And so then I just kind of like had this huge cognitive dissonance thing going on, and it actually was kind of ruined my life, to be honest
Yes.
with you.
I
Like
will
like
say, just as a side note, I personally and a lot of listeners have gone through what we call like religious trauma or spiritual abuse. Um, yeah, so I think a lot of people kind of feel you on that. So yes, it will blow up
yeah.
your life because you end up questioning everything that you thought was true. Things that you thought made up your identity are ripped away from you, and it's very unpleasant. So we feel you, we have empathy for you. Please go on.
Well, and things that your parents and your grandparents and your aunts and uncles and your friends and your colleagues, they all just believe it. They all, especially here in Utah,
I
because
was
that's where
just
I'm
thinking that,
based.
right?
Like in
Very,
Utah, you're in the soup,
yeah, pervasive.
and it's like it's very difficult. It's traumatizing, first of
Mhm.
all,
Mhm.
and like pulling yourself out of that takes a lot of courage. So anybody who's done that, I'm like super proud of them. Um, good job. It gets better if you're like in the middle of that. But anyway, after I kind of left that, I was still dealing with like the side effects of it. Um, I was like, man, when I die, I'm never gonna get to see my family again. I was literally,
Oh no.
when it happened, I was like, my wife was 8.5 months pregnant. So we were right there. We were right there. And what happened is I was in a business meeting in Cincinnati, and I saw this Reddit thread, and it was like, cult survivors, what's your story? And I got on there. I wasn't even expecting it. Someone was like, well, I was raised Mormon, and it just left me with a lot of trauma. And I was like, wait, what? I was like, how dare you? Like, how dare you call my faith a cult? And then I was like, I opened up the thread, and it was like, Mormonism isn't a cult, and it was like a big argument. And then I remember this comment, it will always stick with me. It was like, Mormonism is absolutely a cult, and here's why. Here's a list of the top 10 common behaviors across all cults. And I read it and it was like, check, 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 check. And I was like, oh my God, am I in a cult? And that's how it happened. It's just like this,
So painful.
like this eye-opening moment where I was like, oh my God, I'm in a cult. I was like, I can't believe this. 20 something years been in a cult, because that's when it happened. And then after that, I was like a wanderer kind of. I was just drifting through life. I was pretty depressed, honestly. So I was kind of wandering through life, not really having much like direction. And then I stumbled across the phenomena of near-death experiences. And I think that
Ah,
you recently had a woman on your show, because
yes,
I
Nicole.
actually listened to your show. I'm a big fan,
I
by the
love
way.
that. You're so nice.
And yeah, Nicole. And so anybody who's listened to those episodes will know what a near-death experience is. If anybody hasn't, it's basically when someone is pronounced clinically dead, like you are dead, and then they come back to life basically, and then they have this experience. And a lot of them will experience the same types of things. That's what drew me in. I was like, wait a minute, so all these people who are like different cultures, different religions, different ethnicities, they
And
all
across
experience,
time.
right, all sorts of different stuff, are experiencing the same things. And I was like, there's got to be something to this. And that led me down the rabbit hole. And then I discovered past lives. And I was like, whoa. And then like the main thing about that is like the childhood cases where there's children who will have knowledge that they absolutely should not have.
Right.
And that was where what drew me in as a complete skeptic was like, hold on a minute. It's like, how is that possible? And then I started doing a lot more research and a lot more research. And then I found out about past life hypnosis or past life regressions. I don't really like that term. Nowadays I call it a past life review, just because of like the energetic difference in the word of regression versus review. If you kind of tune into the energetic intentions of the words, they're quite different.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so I kind of went down that rabbit hole, and me and my buddy were like looking into it because we were kind of interested in it. We were talking about it. We were like, maybe we should like go to a hypnotist and like try it out for fun and see if it's legit. And he was like, yeah, that's great. Next time I'm in town, let's do it. And so I was looking up pricing, and it's like $240 an hour with a 2-hour minimum per person. And I was like, whoa. I was like,
Wait, I
that's a
don't know that I
no-go.
need to know that bad.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, that's not gonna happen. And then I just like the curiosity was just like hounding me, man. It was like in the back of my head, it's like, you gotta try this, you gotta try this, you gotta try this. Well, I was like, man, I bet you I could just do it myself.
Sure, absolutely. DIY regression.
Right. And I was like, there's gotta be like some kind of a script or a tutorial or something online. And I found this script, and my brother lived with me at the time, and this was geez, like three or 4 years ago now. And I was like, hey man, you wanna check out your past lives?
Who's
And
gonna pass that up?
he was like, sure. And then I sat him down, we played some like nice music, and he went, and I didn't even do anything but read the script. It was literally just a script. And then my brother went into this past life as a one-eyed woman who like died of exposure and starvation from being an outcast in Ireland or something like that. And he's like, my brother's like jacked. Like he's super buff, and he's like this big tough dude. He doesn't like, he's not one of the people who are like super in tune with his emotions, but he was on my couch just like just like
Oh,
sobbing. He's like, I can't believe this. And I was like, what did I just get myself into?
so you like stumbled into it kind of in a way.
Yeah, it was like at first it was like haha hee hee. The next thing that happened that same night, I was like, okay, dude, you got to do it to me. I was like, you got to do it to me now. And he's like, okay. So then we went to McDonald's, and I haven't really told this even on my show, so this is like exclusive
Ooh.
story. We went to McDonald's after that, and we were in his truck in the drive-thru, and we're at the McDonald's by where we went. There was there's like, you know how they like trap you in the drive-thru so that you can't leave until you give them money.
Yes.
So we were stuck there. There was
Excellent business strategy.
right. There was a bus stop, and the only reason I'm telling this is because my brother used a word that he had never used in his life before, and I googled it, and it was like commonly used in Ireland at the time where his life took place. And I was like, whoa. When I found that, I was like, no way. And so like he used the word that he was unfamiliar with, because he was saying, man, if that guy, like, imagine if that guy jumped in the back of, or I said that, I was like, imagine if that guy like jumped in the back of your truck when we were driving away. And he said, I would stop and say, okay, pup, get out. And then he was like this moment of like, what did I just say?
Well,
And I was
I have
like,
no idea what
pup.
I mean by that.
Yeah. And I was like, pup? What does that mean? He's like, I don't know. I looked it up, and it was like a slang term in like the early 1900s for like an overconfident young man
That's
in
funny.
Ireland, which is where he thinks that it was. And so that was like a little affirm or confirmation to me. I was like, wow, that's very interesting. We went back to my house, and we did the hypnosis on me. Just again, nothing but reading the script, just straight across the script. And I went into this life of, and I want to be clear, if I was going to make up a life, I would want to be something like heroic or impactful, right? Like everybody wants to be someone who made a difference.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean that average people can't make a difference, but you know what I mean. Like people want to be famous people.
Yeah, absolutely. Everybody's like, oh, I was a queen. Oh, I was a princess. Oh, I was head of state, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
that's the dream. But
Yeah.
not every single one of your lives is going to be that, right? So yeah, I do
Mm-hmm.
understand what you mean.
Yeah, and you know, most of the time they're not that, but this particular time, my first time ever, I went into this life of being just an average housewife, a woman in the 1730s, and I was obsessed with my husband Robert, and we had a dog named Rufus, and he was like this sheepdog or something, some kind of a breed. I actually found the breed later. I didn't keep hold on to that info or anything, but like I verified, I was like, oh wow, it's not a common breed anymore, but back then it was.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I ended up dying in childbirth.
Oh,
Yeah, and that
that's
was brutal.
dramatic.
Yeah, and I felt like phantom. Sometimes you can feel like the phantom pains, and so I felt like horrible, excruciating, not like actual pain, but like the impressions of the pain. And I was like, ooh, ow, like it was horrible. I can't even imagine that. But then anyway, fast forward after the script was done, I came out of it, and I was acting very feminine, like my brother and my wife said something naughty, and I was shocked. I literally went and I
You
flushed.
clutched your pearls.
Yeah, I like touched my collarbones and went, how could you say that? But normally I'd be like, you know, but
Sure.
like I was like, I can't believe you said that. My face went bright red, and I was embarrassed, and I was very, very feminine. It was very strange, and
Because
it
that
was.
sticks with you for a minute, right? Like for a little bit afterwards, after the session, part of that is still very active and living very close to the surface in you. I think that is not, I think yes, it must have felt strange, but I think that is probably a common experience for people.
I would say for like maybe the first and second time, yeah.
Yeah. And then that stops after a while. You learn to integrate faster or it's less surprising.
You learn to keep it separate.
I see. Okay.
So like the first time, for a second time, depending on how adept the person is naturally at it, you can actually make commentary like as yourself. So like as your current self, you can like make commentary and be like, oh, that's what happened, and then like get back into it. So it's very interesting. I didn't know that at the time, and I really didn't know what was what? Obviously, I was just like, hey, let's let's find your past lives, dude.
But that's one thing that I kind of love about talking with you about this is it's not like you have some sort of family history of this or that you ever had any sort of exposure to this growing up. You're truly, I want to say self-taught, but I also think just from the conversations we've had, there was always something in you. Like there was always a part of you that was going to do this work. And I'm sorry that you had to go through such a painful transformation to find that part of you. But like it's almost as if you are over the years, like spontaneously coming into the knowledge of your own abilities. Would you say that's accurate? That's just kind of how I feel from our conversations over this past year. How do you feel about my analysis of you, Ian?
Looking back, it like when you're in it, it's very hard to analyze. It's very hard to be like, oh, this and then this and then this happened for this purpose.
Sure.
But like looking back at, kind of where I am now, it very much in retrospect, I think that's
Sure.
the word I'm looking for. It really is like it feels like building blocks. Now that you mention it. That's
Yeah.
not something that I like consciously have really analyzed very much, but yeah, it very much feels like I was being set up.
Right. Like you were being drawn to this
Yeah.
work, right? Like
Yeah.
the bits of experience that needed to come to you came to you in the proper time so that you would be ready for the thing that you're doing now.
Yeah, and it's constantly evolving. It's always
Yes.
changing.
Yes. And I think that's actually true for a lot of people. But like you said, like when you're in it, you can't necessarily see the next, you can maybe see the next step on the path, but you certainly can't see the destination, right? It's very cloudy. You're not entirely sure where you're going. And what I really respect about you having come at this as a skeptic in a lot of ways, coming from, I think we talked about this before, coming from a just like, none of this is real. I reject it all. Uh, you know, being willing to trust what was coming to you. And it would, I think, be really easy to uh, avoid it or be frightened by it or shut it down. And you were sort of able to trust yourself. And I don't know if you've ever thought about it like that, but I would love to know sort of what was it in you that allowed you to trust this really new experience with no precedent in your life?
Curiosity, just like unsatiable curiosity. There's a few times where it scared me,
I
honestly.
bet. I bet.
There was a couple times where, because different people are better at it at going into the state commonly referred to as trance. So when I say trance, it's like hypnosis,
Hmm.
right? Some people are put off by that word, but for anybody listening, like if you go into a trance, you go into a trance while driving, you go into a trance while you're brushing your teeth, you go into a trance while you're whatever. It's hypnosis is a very common state. It's a natural state that we enter into. So when I say trance, don't be off put by that. But some people are better at going into trance than others.
It just
And
comes more easily to some people.
yes,
Okay.
yes. There's lots of different factors that play into that. And I've done a lot of research about it too. And experimentation and things like that, which is like a whole other conversation.
Yeah.
But um like my sister is one of the people who can just get right into it, like with very little prodding. I think that she might be like actually a psychic medium,
Oh,
and she
fascinating.
and she had some very very intense sessions with me, and she ended up saying I'm never going to do this again, because it was very intense. One of them was a past life as a World War II soldier.
Oh,
That was like my second or third session, and that was pretty intense and pretty heartbreaking. I
Wow.
was not prepared for it. I actually have an interview with her on my show where she talks about it. Yeah, pretty brutal. So like
Yeah, I
that
imagine.
stuff scared me for like I stopped doing it for like 6 months, but then it was there it was again. I was like,
All that
I
curiosity. Gotta know, gotta
I got to
do
get
it, gotta
back into
see
it.
where this goes.
And at first it was like, you know what? I got to prove this is real, man. Like I got to prove it, but eventually I got my proof and it stopped being about proving it and it started being about like healing people.
I want to talk about that, because about the healing part, because I think a lot of times we think of past life regressions as just kind of a lark, a fun little thing. Like what I imagine you and your brother were doing that first time, and you're like, "Hey, this will be fun. What a silly thing to do on a Friday night or whatever." Um, but in
Pretty
your
accurate.
experience, but in your experience, and now that you've done many of these over the years, there is a true healing component to it. And I would like to hear a little bit more about how you discovered the healing component, why you think there's a healing component, just anything that you can tell us about that.
Yeah, sure. So to give people like an idea of like my journey through this, and I'm just setting this up for context. My show started off as just the regression session, and I did that for like the alliteration, right? And it's catchy.
Cute. It's rhymey. People
Yeah,
remember
and
it. Got it.
it's cool. And then I was like, you know what? I need to add. And at first it was like an SEO kind of a thing, right? So like marketing and stuff. And I was like, I need to add like uh hot words or keywords into my my title. And then it was a guide to past lives and the metaphysical. And then afterwards, I like after doing it for a while, I was like, oh man, it's not really like accurate anymore. So then I changed it to exploring healing through past lives and the metaphysical. Because it's huge. It's insanely stupid effective. I'll give you an example, and I'm not going to use names for their privacy or anything. So I had this gentleman recently come to me saying like, "Hey, I've got like what I would describe as crippling anxiety. I've had it for 30 years or so." And I'm like, "Wow." And he's like, "I've tried anti-anxiety drugs. I've tried therapy. I've tried yoga. Nothing worked." And so I was like, okay. And I sat him down and I asked him a lot of questions because I don't just jump straight into it because there's different techniques that I use. Not all of them are actually past life hypnosis. Some of them are like a core realignment with your
Hmm.
energy
Hmm.
or whatever, right? So depending on what he needed, I was trying to figure that out. And I decided to use a method I call the core realignment. I'm not going to get into that, but I found he's like, it just the whole time we were basically trying to move this block. And he's like, it just feels like it's just too deep. It feels like it's too deep for me to move. And I was like, okay, so let's try this. So then I put him in, I hypnotized him fairly quickly. And he went into this past life where, essentially like what this energy was like a feeling that he needed to be punished, a feeling that he needed to be um you know pay for his crimes. And he went into this past life where he was this basically like fence kind of a guy where basically if there was something dirty that needed done, that was the guy you go to. And he went through this lifetime and we went through the whole thing, but after the fact, that feeling of like needing to be punished was completely gone, because what it allows you to do is it allows you to step outside of yourself and view it in a different perspective.
Hmm.
If nothing else, like if anybody listening is like, yeah, right, there's no such thing as past lives. It doesn't matter to me whether or not you're actually experiencing a literal past life. Regardless of whether or not it's a real experience. And
Right.
that's what matters to me. As far as I'm concerned, it could be your subconscious making a story up. I don't care. I'm going to follow that story all the way through. And
Right.
but what you find is like there's like little verifiable details in there that you can't explain. Like I never knew that. I never had that. And so it very quickly became apparent after speaking to people on my show, um, that it is about healing. It's not necessarily about exploration. Now, there's a caveat to that. Like once you get your healing done, I'm all for the exploration. But before you're going to do the exploration, you should really focus on healing. And that doesn't mean that you're going to be a completely healed, fully guruized person all
That
at
may be my
once,
new
but
favorite word, guruized.
guruized person. But if you're working on it, then that's cool, right? Like you can't heal everything all at once. And some of the wounds are deep. And one thing you notice after doing like a few hundred of these things is you notice that there's themes. Sometimes you'll go through and you'll go through a couple different lifetimes. And a lot of the
In one
time,
session?
yeah, yeah, in one session.
Oh my gosh, that sounds like so much.
Yeah, but what you see is you end up seeing themes.
I see.
But then the themes they come across and they'll be like, "Oh, I'm doing the exact same thing in right now." And it's like, yeah, so you carry these patterns over, and it's really about trying to interrupt the pattern, trying to become aware of the pattern and fix it.
And that is almost always the first step to healing, right? Is becoming aware of your unconscious choices, the things that are subtly informing your life that you don't really even know were there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think there's this thought that past life regression is this sort of new agey thing that's just recently come into existence, but ancient cultures were aware of the fact that we live these lives many times over, right? That our soul lives many different times as we go through life. And so this is, while the hypnotists or whatever, like the techniques may be new to us, the concept is actually quite old and has been acknowledged by people throughout human history. I think, as best I can tell, it's not like I'm some sort of expert, but just again, like you, like with my research and what you spend your time trying to learn. And yeah, the patterns, right? You have a life and you keep doing something, and what I think, when I experienced your work, and we can talk a little bit about that too, maybe, but when I experienced your work, it was, like moments, and then you helped me find like a moment in that timeline that had I made, or that person, or however you want to say it, made a different decision, like would have just gone off on a totally different path. And now it's like identifying that moment, and where's that moment that I'm living in this life, and can I make a different choice now to break that pattern, right? And not that it's like this is my last life, I'm totally free, but like now can I be working through that, they call it karma in the yogic tradition, right? Like, can I work through that bit of stuff that I've been bringing with me through the centuries, and then be presented with a whole new thing, right? And so I think that was actually incredibly healing. Um, Listeners, Ian did a past life regression with me a while back. I think about it all the time, uh, because it did help me identify a moment, a pattern, a tendency in myself to make a choice at various points when maybe I might be better served to make a different choice. And it has brought into my consciousness the need to think through, to consider other choices, to take a risk, do the thing that might be a little bit scary in the moment. And I feel like I just told a very long story and interrupted you, but like, yeah, that's the healing, is finding that pattern and bringing things into your consciousness that were buried.
You have to understand that there's this concept out there, and it's very mind-boggling. It's very difficult to grasp, but I try to, like, my goal or my job as a content creator is to present these things in a digestible way. So the best way I can describe this concept, it's called simultaneous time. Okay. The easiest way to think about it is like the past the present, and the future, it's all happening at the same time. Right. And that's a mind-boggling concept. So like everything that ever has happened, everything that's happening, and everything that ever will happen is all happening simultaneously at the same exact time. So how can we look at that in a productive way? Well, those moments that you were talking about, as far as you're concerned, and as far as I'm concerned, they're gone. Right? You, in this moment right now, the past doesn't exist. It's over with. We can't change the past. And I can't prove to you that I'm going to grab my cup of water here and dump it all over my laptop in 5 minutes. Right? For all you know, I could do it. For all you know, I might not. The future does not exist. It's a farce. The only thing that you have to worry about is right now in this moment. And the reason I'm bringing that up is because of these, what I call nexus points in your life, crossroads, where you can make those choices, and they're not all in the past, right? They're right now. Every single choice you make, and I'm not talking about like, oh, should I have a salad for dinner? Should I have pizza for dinner? It's like, yeah, that'll have tiny effects on your health, but you're going to have these nexus points in your life, and you got to just really, the best way that you can navigate them is thinking about like what's going to be best for you, right? And I want to talk about karma, my understanding of karma. You know, there's this misconception about karma. It's like you're going to get it.
That's
right?
not what karma is. That's not what karma is historically. That's such a appropriation and mischaracterization of karma. So anyway, go on, please.
Yeah,
continue.
It is. And how I like to think of karma is like an entanglement. Like, you imagine like everybody put like a thread of yarn into the world, just trying to like go through the other side of the world, but there's no like there's nothing guiding the yarn to get through the other side, so everybody's yarn ends up getting it all tangled up. The best way that you can focus on like not having to spend as much time untangling this massive convoluted ball of yarn is if you just start focusing on it one thread at a time. And how you can do that, and what the purpose of like the past life hypnosis is to identify those individual threads so you can start pulling them and unraveling this massive entanglement. So really, when you look at it, you're helping to balance out your karmic entanglement. I never even refer to it as karma. I call it karmic entanglement. And I'll give you an example of what I've been doing to do this. Is I've been going back through people I felt that I have personally maybe not necessarily wronged, and people that I have felt that I've wronged, and I've just apologized for my part in it. Like, even if I felt like they've wronged me, I've gone through and said, hey, look, I'm sorry for my part in whatever happened. And what that's doing is it's like severing the yarn strand so that you don't have to deal with it anymore.
It's letting bits of that go. Yeah.
Right. And that's what any reputable past life hypnotist will do, is try to assist you in moving through that. And that's what I was trying to do when I did yours, and that was kind of back when I was not even as experienced as I am now.
Well, sure, it was a year ago. Yeah. If anything, you've been doing it for another year, of course you're going to have more experience.
Everyone is talking about Jesus Revolution. Witness the untold origin story.
Our country is a dark and divided place, but now there's hope, and it's spreading.
Of the last spiritual awakening in American history.
This is your home, and I want you to tell all your friends about it.
Jesus Revolution, starring Jonathan Rumi and Kelsey Grammer. Rated PG-13. Some material may be inappropriate for children under 13. Jesus Revolution. Only in theaters now.
Can we talk about that for a second? Like,
yeah, it's your
reputability. Like just reputability, because like that's part of it, right? We're all very skeptical, and there are people out there who will scam you. right? And it's scary to think that somebody might be trying to trick you or do something. And obviously, I know you're not that person because we've had all these interactions over the year, but like, is there a way to know, or like, how do you recommend if people are interested in stuff like this, how do they find somebody that isn't just out to, I don't know, take their money or confuse them, or who's real, who's not? How do we know? Or do we know?
Most people that do this, I think most people they truly have like good intentions. I really, really believe that. I don't think that there's a majority of people out there that do this kind of stuff that are actively like, oh, I'm going to screw you over. I mean, there's a couple people that don't do it right. And the reason that they don't do it right is because they have this thing in their body called expectations. And they'll be like sitting there trying to hypnotize somebody. And for the most part, I personally believe everybody can go into trance, but some people are more difficult to get into trance than others. Like I said, people have more aptitude for it and people have less aptitude for it. I have a condition called aphantasia.
Mm.
I cannot visualize or hear anything in my own head. It's just dark and quiet. I don't even have like inner self-talk. It's just completely silent and dark in my head. And so before I realized that, I thought I was doing it wrong. And a lot of hypnotists will follow their training. They'll stick to the status quo and they'll be like, well, why can't you do it? Why can't you go into trance? Well, it's not necessarily that person's fault. It's your approach. So my recommendation is two things. Find somebody, or maybe three things. Find somebody who has like really good reviews, because that's like the number one way people will let you know they did a good job is they'll leave a review. Second thing is maybe try to find somebody who's been doing it for a couple years. That, people who come in right out of the gate going, I'm going to charge a lot of money for this. And when they have no experience, what they're going to do is you're not going to be having as much help with that karmic entanglement.
Mm-hmm.
And then the third thing is just trust your gut. Like if you talk to somebody and you're like, man, I just don't really feel right about this. It's okay to go to someone else. You're under no obligation to go to that person just because you talk to them, and it's okay. Just trust your gut about it and you'll be fine. I have on my show, if anybody checks it out, I have tons of people on there who I think are reputable for the most part. Back when I first did it, there were a couple of people where I was like, And they've kind of gotten better though. So everybody on there is like pretty legit. I try to keep it very reputable and credible.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the whole goal of it now, is to create a resource back. It's not about proving it anymore. It's about creating a resource.
That's right.
Yeah. And that's really what I would recommend is just like trust your gut mainly. Is if someone's not going to like talk to you beforehand, most people will do like a 15-minute call or 15
just like
minute
a pre-chat, right? Just to see if you're a
Yeah.
good energetic fit.
Yeah. And I have actually an example about this. Not everybody's going to jive with me, right? And some people want like a more mystical approach and that's fine. And some people want a more practical approach where they want to have the proof. I don't really necessarily care about the proof, and that's fine, right? It doesn't matter. I was doing a pre-call to have this woman on my show. She runs a fairly large forum online somewhere. I'm not trying to call this woman out, but she was going to come on my show and she was talking to me and I was like, yeah, I'm, my standard like information dump was, she said, tell me about your podcast. Oh, I'm top 10% globally, blah, blah, blah. I have all these people. And then I was like, I do past life hypnosis too. So I totally know what you're talking about. And she just goes like, it blew my mind. She was like, isn't this a conflict of interest for you? And I was like, what? And she was
Oh
like, yeah,
no.
aren't you afraid that I'm going to take your clients? And I was like,
Oh,
what are you talking about?
that's not good.
Right. And I was like, what are you talking about, lady? And I was like, my goal is, I was like, my people don't come to my show for you. They come to my show for me.
Well, and also just like there is room in the world for everyone, right? Like you'll find your people, she'll find her people. Like
Right.
there's a lot of room, there's a lot of space for healing modalities. We are not living in a healed world, so why would I ever deny somebody the possibility of meeting somebody that could heal them? If I can't do it, my greatest desire is for it to be done no matter how it happens. It doesn't have to be like that's not my ego is not wrapped up in like if people are like, oh, I listened to your chakra coach, but then I found Ian and now I'm only listening to Ian. I'm like, but do you find healing there? Then that's what I want for you. And please, right? Like, oh my gosh, that is,
Yeah. And that's the whole
oh,
thing
that's a
of
little,
like,
that's kind of unfortunate, actually.
yeah. And well, it was a big missed opportunity on her part because I do have a fairly large audience out there, people who are looking for this kind of stuff. And I just trusted that gut feeling. I got like bad juju. I was
Yeah,
like, ooh, I was like, I don't like that. And I never called her back.
yeah.
I was like, you know what? This isn't going to work
You know,
out.
I'm gonna
Have a
pass
nice
on
day.
this. Yeah, I've had that experience a couple of times where it's just like, this doesn't feel right. When I check in with my body, this sensation isn't good and comfortable, so I'm gonna pass. Yeah, I've also had that experience.
Yeah. Oh, one thing I want to say too is you can do past life regression over Zoom.
Yeah, that's what you and I did. It was amazing.
Yeah. You don't have to be in person.
Yeah,
So you can literally find anybody in the world to do it with. So there's like so many people out there. And there's lots of resources to find practitioners too. You know, like the Newton Institute, they do life between life regressions. Um quantumhealers.com, they have like a list of them. And there's I run the past lives subreddit kind of like for the most part. And
yeah.
I've been trying to do like approved hypnotists and approved service providers that we kind of interview and approve and say, yeah, these
Like a
guys are
vet,
legit.
do just like a check-in before. That's
Hmm.
really neat. You are just a wealth of information, which is, I think, what you said your mission was is to provide resources for people in their various healing processes and modalities. And so we've talked about like how people could find other practitioners, but I think people are going to kind of want to know where they can find you. How can people find out more about you and what you do?
My main thing right now is the podcast, the
Hmm.
regression session, exploring healing through past lives and the metaphysical. That's the main thing you'll find me at. I post bi-weekly, but the episodes are usually like an hour long, and they're normally like packed full of tons of insight from all sorts of people from all sorts of walks of life. And it's awesome. I love doing it. And my email is in every single episode twice. You can email me at theregressionsession@gmail.com. I also do a lot of moderating and content curation on the past lives subreddit. So if you have like questions about past lives that you want to ask, you can actually get on Reddit on the past lives thing and make a post, and a lot of people will get on and give you their perspectives. It's like 45,000 people
Holy
on
moly.
there. And yeah, it's like a huge community, and we're really trying to set it up to where we can do like the Reddit talks, where we can do like free group regressions. We have experts come on and do Q&As, all sorts of stuff that we're running on there. So that's a
That's
really
very
great
cool.
resource for people. And
I will
that's
get
the
links to that. Yeah, I'll put links to that in
yeah.
the show notes so people can find it directly.
Yeah, those are the main two places that you can reach me. And
Y'all reach out
also,
to Ian. No lie, like if you're looking for outside the box thinking, if you are just like, none of what I'm doing in my life is working, go listen to like Ian's thought experiments, because you will walk away just with like 1,000 new ideas to think about, but not in an overwhelming way, just in like the sense that your skull has actually expanded to create room for moreness, more just expansion of ways of thinking and consciousness. That is how I feel every time I leave a conversation with you, that I'm like, I need about 30 minutes to process what's just happened here. And I love it. And I'm being very serious. Like, it's like, I just leave thinking in new ways. And I appreciate that so much about you.
Hey, well, thanks a lot. And by the way, I think I have your recording from your session. I think that we recorded it. I think I have the recording.
Oh, wow.
And so I'll check on that if you want the audio file. Maybe you could
Or
even one of
maybe
these days like
put
put
it
it
up on
on
the
here.
Patreon or something. Yeah.
Yeah, something
It
like
was
that.
intense, y'all. I don't know if you'd want to watch it. It was really amazing for me. I don't know how interesting it would be to watch, but yeah, that's awesome.
It's all fascinating. Yours was really, really interesting. I thought it was very cool.
So, well, Ian, I thank you so much for coming on the show today. It's just always a pleasure to talk to you, and I learn so much from you every time we talk.
Thanks for having me. I'm really grateful you invited me on.
My pleasure. Have a wonderful day, and I will talk to you later.
You too.
Bye.
Hi again. I am always so grateful to have people like Ian in my life, and I hope that what he shared with us was fun and interesting for you too. I've included a link to his podcast, the Reddit board he mentioned, and his email in the show notes. Go listen to his show. Seriously, if you're interested in this topic, he is just a wealth of information. Also, in the show notes are links to my social media pages, Instagram and Facebook, where you can find me as your chakra coach, and the Patreon too. We mentioned that I might put my reading up there. I'll rewatch the video to see it's even a little interesting to anyone that isn't me. So you can check that out and all the other content that's there. And last thing, the 7-day chakra manifesting challenge is up and ready for you. You can take more or less than 7 days, but each day includes a lesson on the role of each chakra in the manifestation process and how to prepare your energy for creating big new things in your life. You'll deal with your fears and emotions around manifestation, creating and attracting the right vibrations for manifesting, and how to detach from the results and let the universe take over. The link to that is also in the show notes. So check it out if you're interested in a basics course on how to use the chakra system for manifestation. I hope you have an amazing day, and we'll talk next week. Bye.